Apparition. Apparition was a form of magical transportation, in which the user traveled instantly from one location to another, without traversing the space in between. This was accomplished by having the user focus on a desired location in their mind and then purposely disappearing from where they were, to reappear at the desired location. Apparition was by far the fastest way to get to a desired destination, but was tricky to pull off correctly and disastrous if botched. The ability to apparate was a relatively advanced skill for wizards, but other magical creatures were capable of disappearing and reappearing of their own volition as well, such as house elves and diricals. Apparition was a popular method of travel in the wizarding world, though it was stated that plenty of adult witches and wizards did not bother with it, preferring slower but safer methods of traveling such as broomsticks, the Floo network, or portkeys. Albus Dumbledore once noted that most people vomited the first time they apparat. According to Harry Potter, apparition felt like being forced through a very tight rubber tube. According to Wilkie Twycross, Ministry of Magic official and apparition instructor, one had to recall the 3Ds, destination, determination, and deliberation. One had to be completely determined to reach one's destination, and move without haste, but with deliberation. A witch or wizard ordinarily required a wand in order to apparate, but like many other spells, it could be performed without one. This type of transportation could cause an audible noise, ranging from a small pop, to a loud crack that may sound to muggles like a car backfiring, depending on their skill. House elves could also apparate, but without some of the restrictions that wizards had, due to their unique type of magic. For example, they could apparate inside and outside of Hogwarts and even the Crystal Cave, where powerful enchantments prevented all witches and wizards from doing so. Also, when they apparat, the sound was most often a loud crack. Apparition was called disapparition from the point of view of someone at the place being left, and apparition from the point of view of someone at the destination, much like the words disappear and appear. The British Ministry of Magic required all witches or wizards hoping to apparate to have a license. One of the reasons was so that they could not apparate into a muggle bank and steal all the money therein. Etymology. Apparition is derived from the word appario, which is Latin for appear or I become visible. Range. Apparition had a range limit, and became increasingly difficult with the distance to be traveled. It was very strongly advised that intercontinental apparition is only to be attempted by the most highly skilled of wizards, otherwise risking splinching, severe injury, and even death. Apparition also required a familiarity with the terrain of the place the wizard wanted to go to, as they needed to be able to visualize it clearly. In 1996, Harry Potter performed apparition very impressively, to get himself and a weakened Albus Dumbledore over a long distance, most likely across the country. When Harry, Ron, and Hermione were trapped by Death Eaters in Malfoy Manor, Bellatrix Lestrange alerted Voldemort, who was investigating Nurmengard Castle in the Austrian Alps. In order to get to Malfoy Manor, Voldemort had to fly most of the way. He had to fly over a dark and stormy sea, to get within range of the manor. As such, even an extremely powerful wizard like Voldemort couldn't apparate much further than the length of England. As such, wizards apparently could not apparate somewhere outside of range by imagining that location and apparating small stretches at a time, as doing so would possibly cause splinching. Destination. Besides the user focusing in their mind on a desired place, the limitation of the choice of destination is unclear. It is most likely that the wizard or witch could only apparate to somewhere they had seen or been to before. During Harry, Ron, and Hermione's hunt for Horcruxes in late 1997, they apparat to places familiar to Hermione, such as Tottenham Court Road and other holiday places, with Hermione noting the past significance and familiarity of each place that she apparat to. The same principle applied during late 1996 when Albus Dumbledore and Harry Potter apparat to the residence of Horace Slughorn in Budleigh Baberton, a place previously familiar to Dumbledore but not to Harry. Seeing a destination through a photograph or other image was usually not enough to let the user apparate there safely. Dumbledore had seen a picture of the cave in which he suspected Voldemort to have hidden a Horcrux scene in Tom Riddle's room at Wolves Orphanage. However, as Dumbledore said to Harry in his 6th year at Hogwarts, he had been trying to locate the cave for a very long time. This suggests that a witch or wizard trying to apparate needed to have some idea of where their desired destination was. It was not enough to only have seen it or know about it. However, in 1997, Hermione and Harry were able to apparate to Godric's Hollow without remembering the place, thus surely not being able to visualize it. Hermione had never been there, and Harry had been there only as a 1-year-old child. Hence, probably wizards and witches could apparate to places they haven't seen or been to before, as long as they clearly think about the name of the place and know the approximate location. Probably apparition was not completely accurate in this case, e.g. they apparat to Godric's Hollow, but apparently they weren't able to choose where exactly in Godric's Hollow they would appear. History. In 1979, Creature managed to escape the Horcrux cave via disapparition, following Regulus Black's order to come home when he finished his task. Later, in 1997, he brought Mundungus Fletcher into Grimmauld Place with side-along apparition. In 1992, House Elf Dobby was able to get into Harry's bedroom in 4 Privet Drive, then disapparate, with a crack like a whip, and appear and disappear inside Hogwarts. In 1993, an unnamed Ravenclaw student suggested that Sirius Black may have entered Hogwarts via apparition. Harry Potter learned more details about apparition in a conversation with the Weasleys, regarding traveling to the 1994 Quidditch World Cup. Fudge appeared out of thin air in the cabinet room to inform the Prime Minister of the goings-on at the Quidditch World Cup. Percy Weasley apparat downstairs every morning, while living at the Burrow, just to prove he could. Charlie Weasley failed his apparition test the first time because he landed on top of a woman who was shopping, 5 miles south of where he meant to appear. Fred and George Weasley passed their apparition test with distinction and enjoyed popping into other people's bedrooms at Grimmauld Place with a loud cracking noise, just to annoy people. Albus Dumbledore took Harry along by side-along apparition for the first time in 1996. Harry stated that the sensation was uncomfortable, like being forced through a tight rubber tube. In 1996, a notice for the 12-week apparition course appeared on the Gryffindor common room wall, along with a sign-up sheet. These lessons began on the first Saturday in February, which would be in the Great Hall, led by Ministry Apparition instructor Wilkie Twycross. During these lessons the first student to apparate was Susan Bones, but unfortunately she got splinched and left her leg behind. The heads of house surrounded her and fixed the problem. By the third class, student nicknames for the apparition instructor included Dog Breath and Dunghead. The apparition test took place in Hogsmeade on April 21 for those who had already turned 17, including Ron Weasley, who was struggling with the subject. He and Hermione signed up for extra practice lessons in Hogsmeade. Hermione passed the apparition test in her first try, but Ron left half an eyebrow behind and failed. It is unknown when and where Ron took the test a second time, or if he ever passed. Harry, Ernie Macmillan, and Draco Malfoy were too young to take the test in April 1997. That would presumably include a Neville Longbottom as well, since his birthday was a day before Harry's. Harry never took the apparition test, although he impressively initiated side-along disapparition with Dumbledore to get him back from the Sea Cave to Hogwarts, when he was weak. Harry was still underage at the point, but he was holding Dumbledore's arm, and therefore the Ministry would not have traced him. After Harry turned 17, he apparat at least once alone to Grimmauld Place under his invisibility cloak, and several times side-along with Hermione and Ron under the cloak. The Ministry never knew because by then they were no longer underage, so the trace did not work. Pious Thickness made it an imprisonable offense to connect 4 Privet Drive to the Fleur network, place a port key there, or apparate in or out, in order to prevent Harry from getting out of there safely, so the Order used the so-called Seven Potters plot with Polyjuice Potion and broomsticks to get Harry to safety. During Voldemort's reign over the Ministry of Magic, apparition to and from the Ministry offices was restricted only to the senior members. Side-along apparition. A variant of apparition used to transport 2 or more individuals at once was called side-along apparition. This method could be used by adults seeking to transport underage wizards, or licensed individuals could use this method to transport an injured party. To perform this version of apparition, the more able party would apparate with the other party holding onto an arm. This method was recommended by the Ministry of Magic for parents with underage children to escape from danger quickly. The party who could not apparate had to hold on to the other as tightly as possible. House elves could perform side-along apparition as well. If both parties knew how to apparate, they didn't need to grip so tightly, as the apparator would simply be guiding their passenger. Side-along apparition could also be forced, as when Death Eater Yaxley grabbed onto Hermione Granger's arm when she, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley escaped from the Ministry of Magic in 1997. He was transported with her when she apparat to 12 Grimmauld Place, and she was only able to escape by shaking his grip with a revulsion jinx and disapparating again. In 1998, Fenrir Greyback captured Harry and forcefully dragged him along when apparating to the Malfoy Manor. Harry found it impossible to break free of this forced side-along apparition. When hoping to apparate with creatures, it would depend on the nature of them. Many of them had a magical nature which would not enable them to travel by apparition. Creature apparition. House elves could apparate, including where wizards were prevented from doing so, such as Hogwarts and 12 Grimmauld Place. Dobby apparat to and from the Hogwarts hospital wing to visit Harry in 1992. In 1998, when Harry, Ron, Luna, Dean, Griphook and Ollivander were imprisoned in the Malfoy Manor cellar while Hermione was being brutally tortured by Bellatrix Lestrange, Dobby arrived to rescue them. He first took Luna, Dean and Ollivander to safety by apparating to Shell Cottage with them, then returned to rescue the others. Phoenixes were capable of a form of apparition, disappearing and reappearing by a flash of flames. Like the variant demonstrated by house elves, phoenixes were not hampered by any restrictions that normally prevented wizards from doing so, and they could bring other people along with them. In 1996, Dumbledore used Phoenix apparition to escape Kingsley Shacklebolt, Percy Weasley, and Dolores Umbridge when Harry was caught training Dumbledore's army. Fawkes flew over to Dumbledore, who caught his feet and disappeared in a burst of flame. The Dirical was a magical species of bird that could disappear from one location and reappear in another, similar to how a wizard was able to apparate. License to apparate. A license to apparate was required to practice apparition legally, at least in Great Britain. These could be gained from the Department of Magical Transportation and were required since at least the 1920s. In Great Britain at least, one had to be at least 17 years old to obtain such a license, though other countries such as Denmark made underage apparition legal. Lessons in apparition were available, for an extra charge, to students who were or would be of legal age when the next test was administered. This was similar to Muggle schools where road instruction for driving licenses were available, but at an extra charge. Though it was physically possible to apparate without a license, it was strictly prohibited, because injury could result. Splinching could occur when one had insufficient determination to reach one's goal, causing certain body parts to fail to arrive at the destination with the wizard. For example, Susan Bones left behind her leg when she accidentally splinched herself during an apparition lesson. Although her leg was successfully reattached, she was left shaken by the incident. Splinching also occurred in 1997 to Ron Weasley after disapparating from 12 Grimmauld Place. Ron also failed his first apparition test because his examiner saw he had lost half of his eyebrow at the last minute. In cases of unlicensed apparition when injury resulted, the Accidental Magic Reversal Squad could level heavy fines. In cases where splinching occurred, if the victim had not been treated properly, the injury could be much more serious, such as when Ron suffered severe blood loss after splinching away part of his upper arm while escaping from 12 Grimmauld Place in 1997. It is unknown when and where Ron retook the apparition test, or if he ever passed or even retook it at all. However, Harry Potter successfully apparat multiple times without a license between June 1997 when he brought Albus Dumbledore back to Hogsmeade Village by side-along apparition, and many times during the Second Wizarding War. At Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, students in their 6th year could sign up for Ministry of Magic apparition lessons. Those who turned 17 before the first apparition test date had the opportunity to take additional practice sessions in Hogsmeade. Those whose birthday was not before the original date had the option of taking the test later. To earn the license, one had to prove ability to apparate flawlessly, and even the slightest mistake, whether splinching even the slightest or missing the target location, would result in failure of the test. Anti-disapparition jinx. An anti-disapparition jinx could be used to prevent a witch or wizard from apparating or disapparating to or from a location. Many magical places, such as British Ministry of Magic Headquarters, French Ministry of Magic Headquarters, Woolworth Building, headquarters of the Makusa, the Crystal Cave, Nurmengard Castle, Hogwarts Castle, Azkaban, and the cellar in Malfoy Manor were warded off against apparition, which prevented people from simply appearing inside those places, forcing them to have to physically venture to them or apparate near them, as well as preventing people inside the places from being able to leave. By means of disapparition. Hogwarts had an anti-disapparition jinx cast upon it for most occasions, and when Harry, Ron, and Hermione apparat into Hogsmeade shortly before the Battle of Hogwarts, the Death Eaters had already placed an anti-disapparition jinx on Hogsmeade in order to keep the three trapped there. There was a method of teleportation used by house elves which was not influenced by the jinx, as they were bound by more powerful magic requiring them to appear whenever their master called. However, it was possible that all known anti-disapparition jinxes worked only on humans, for it had been bypassed by creatures such as house elves and phoenixes. Portkeys could also be used to access or depart from locations bound by an anti-disapparition jinx. House elves could, however, take humans along with them when disapparating regardless of whether or not there was an anti-disapparition jinx on the area, as Dobby did during the skirmish at Malfoy Manor. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.